Okay, good morning, children. I was about to say it's good to see you. I can see Sammy, and yeah, even though we can't see you at home, it's lovely to have you with us. Last week we started thinking about God's greatest instruction, God's most important instruction. One day, one of the Pharisees, one of the religious leaders of the day, came up to Jesus and asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? So out of all of the instructions God gives us, which one is the greatest? And I said that over the next month, we're going to think about Jesus' answer in a few different parts. If we flick on, we'll see that last week, part 1 of Jesus' answer was, love the Lord your God. Can we do that all together? Love the Lord your God. We're going to skip on this week. We're going to leave the second part and come back to that a later week. So I'm going to ask Ben, can you reveal the final part of Jesus' answer? So we've done part 1, we're skipping to part 3, and then we're going to go back to the missing middle and do part 2 in another week. So the final part of what Jesus had to say after love the Lord your God was love your neighbour as yourself. I wonder whether you can do that with me for part 3 altogether. Love your neighbour as yourself. Okay, so the first part was love the Lord your God. The final part is love your neighbour as yourself. The Pharisee asked Jesus another question. And the second question that the Pharisee asked Jesus was, who is my neighbour? So when Jesus said love your neighbour as yourself, the Pharisee said, well, Lord, who are you talking about? When you say my neighbour, who is that? Who are you telling me to love as yourself? And then Jesus, rather than just giving him an answer in a sentence, told a story. Okay? So if we flick on, hopefully we'll have some pictures. The Pharisee said, who is my neighbour? And Jesus told this story. There was once a man who was walking from the city of Jerusalem to the city of Jericho, along the road on his own. And when he was taking his journey and walking to Jericho, he was ambushed. He was attacked by a gang of thieves and robbers. Hopefully you'll see some pictures. Here we go. So there's the man taking his journey. And like I said, as he was taking his journey and going along the road, a gang of robbers and thieves ambushed him, took all of his belongings, and left him on the side of the road, injured, hurt, and with nobody around him to take care of him. Before long, another man came and walked by that way, walked by the place where the man was left on the side of the road. And this man was a priest, so he would have worked in the temple in Jerusalem, the place where this man was walking from. But instead of going over to help the beaten man, he walked over to the other side of the road, ignored him, and went on his way. Then a second man came along. So the first man was a priest. The next man who came and arrived was a Levite, and he was walking from Jerusalem to Jericho. But again, instead of helping the beaten man lying on the side of the road, injured with no belongings, he turned the other way. He walked to the other side of the road and carried on his journey. He did nothing to help the man who was lying injured on the side of the road. Finally, a third man came that way. Now, this man wasn't a priest, wasn't a Levite, he wasn't even from Jerusalem. He was from a different land. He was from a land called Samaria. He was from a foreign country. But this third man, unlike the other two, went over to the injured man, picked him up, dressed his cuts, treated him, gave him something to drink, and took care of him. And not only that, he then put the injured man on his donkey or his horse, whatever animal he had with him, and took him to the nearest place to stay, an inn. When he got to the inn, he didn't just stop there. He didn't just leave the man and then continue on his journey. He went even further. He looked after him even more. He stayed with the man overnight, continued to take care of him and look after him. And then, when it came to the following day, he went to the man who owned the place to stay, the inn, and he paid for the injured man to stay there. And he paid everything that the innkeeper was owed. When Jesus finished telling the story, he turned back to the Pharisee and he asked the Pharisee a question. The Pharisee had said at the start of the story, who is my neighbour? Jesus told this story about the beaten up man and 3 men who walked by, the priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan, the man from Samaria, a foreign country. And Jesus asked the Pharisee, which one of these 3 men was a neighbour to the man on the floor? Which one was a neighbour? Which one treated him as a neighbour? I think you probably know the answer. The first man didn't treat him like a neighbour, did he? He left him there, beaten up on the floor with nothing, and walked on his way. And the second man didn't treat him like a neighbour either. it was the third man, the man from a different country, a Samaritan. He was the one who treated the man on the floor like his neighbour. So the answer to the Pharisees' question, who is my neighbour? Jesus told this story to show the Pharisee that it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter whether you live near somebody or whether you're from the same country. That's not what Jesus means when he says neighbour. He wants us to treat every other human being like our neighbour. It doesn't matter whether we're from Bridgend or somewhere else, or whether we're from Wales or somewhere else, or whether we're Welsh and somebody else is Welsh or not. It doesn't matter. The people from the same place as the man didn't treat him like a neighbour. It was the man from another country that treated him like his neighbour. So what Jesus is telling us is we are to try and treat everybody like our neighbour, okay? And what this Samaritan did to treat the man like his neighbour was he cared for him, he looked after him, and he loved him, okay? So, Jesus has told us two things. There's two parts that we've learned now to the most important instructions God has given us. Part 1, love the Lord your God. Part 3, love your neighbour as yourself. Okay, and that is every other human being we are to care for like we would want to be cared for ourselves. Okay, we're going to sing a song called Your Word.